Welcome to another session of the Socialism Conference 2021. I'm very happy and humbled to be here with you comrades from different regions of the world. So first of all, I would like to welcome our panelists and our friends, our comrades from different regions, Southeast Asia, South Asia, Europe, and elsewhere. And thank you for taking the time to attend, join, and participate in this important event. I know that we're busy with our respective organizing works in our respective organizations, but I think it is crucial for us as part of the international life and the struggle for the working people globally to connect with each other and learn from each other and share our strategies in winning struggles in our respective regions and places. So I am Ikra Anugrah. I will be your moderator for this session. I am a contributing editor for Indo Progress, a socialist online magazine based in Indonesia. And our session today is on the left and elections, contradictions and challenges. And before we begin, I would like to announce several house clearing rules for our participants in this panel. The house rules are as follows. All participants are requested to respect differences in views and opinions. This is a friendly exchange among comrades. We might vehemently disagree, but remember that we always disagree as comrades. And second, please pose questions in a short and specific manner to the respective panel for their views. So please be concise. Just ask your question directly and briefly, okay? Q&A is not for debates, but for asking questions only. And lastly, this is also important, we will not tolerate any derogatory remarks, sexist or vulgar postings in the chat, and the organizers have a right to remove such participants if they are found to do so. So I hope that's clear enough for everyone in this panel. And before we begin, I would like to just give a brief introduction of our panel for today. Let me check first. Okay. Oh, and lastly, I'm sorry, before I forget, translations in different languages, Chinese, Thai, Indonesian, are also provided by the organizers. You can just click on the interpretation section of your Zoom account. And I would like to open this panel by just briefly giving a short introduction, something to think about as we discuss together here. So the title of this panel is The Left and Elections, Contradictions and Challenges. As we all know, election is an important side of class struggle for the left in these days and age. Historically, the left had participated in the struggle to advance political democracy or electoral democracy, as well as the broader workers' democracy or socialist democracy via elections or by expanding the scope of electoral participation for the working people. At the same time, we know that capitalists and state elites will not tolerate the electoral and political gains of the left, and therefore will always try to challenge these gains aggressively. But I think we are here not only to lament and learn about our loss, but we're also here to learn from our historical and current experience and examples from past socialist movements as well as our comrades. Indeed, we should learn from our losses and mistakes, but at the same time, we must also remember that we should also learn from our victories in different parts of the world, from South Asia and Latin America to North America and Europe. And I think there are several questions that we should keep in mind as we have our discussion for this panel. What are the limits of bourgeois elections? How should the left formulate its electoral strategies? How do we win elections? And after that, how do we maintain power and govern after winning the elections? Which is probably the more crucial part as well. How should we, the left, combine elections with other revolutionary strategies? These are the questions that I think we'll discuss in this panel in one way or another. And before handing over this panel to our speakers, I would like to introduce them very briefly. We have four comrades, four speakers in today's session. We have Comrade Sonny Melencio, the chairperson of the PLM, Comrade Shane Wainwright, Socialist Alliance co-convener in Australia, Comrade Arul from PSM, Malaysia, and Comrade Melanie Wery Sims, Executive Committee of Die Linke. Very briefly, I will just read their bio. Sonny Melencio is the chair of the Socialist Partido Lakas ang Masa, Party of the Laboring Masses in the Philippines. Sonny is a long-term leader of the Philippine left and fought and survived Ferdinand Marcos martial law regime. And he's also the author of the semi-autobiographical book, Full Quarter Storms and Writings on the Philippine Left. Our second speaker is Sam Wainwright, the Socialist Alliance co-convener. Sam Wainwright is a national co-convener of the Socialist Alliance Australia and a three-term councillor on the Fremantle City Council. He's also an active campaigner for refugee rights and is a well-known figure on the left in Western Australia. Next, we have Comrade Arul from PSM. Arul is currently the Deputy Chairperson of Parti Socialist Malaysia. He served as the Secretary General of the party from 1998 until 2015. Arul worked in Suaram, a leading human rights NGO in Malaysia, and served as local councillor for the Semenyi constituency from 2008 until 2013. He is active in different social movements in Malaysia, ranging from plantation workers' rights to indigenous people's rights. And we also have Comrade Melanie Wery Sims from the left in Germany. Melanie is a member of the party executive committee of Die Linke, the left, and also a member of the International Commission of the party. She was born in Trier, the birthplace of Karl Marx, and she's currently serving as a member of the district council of, I'm sorry to butcher this, Berkhanstel-Wittlich in the state of Rhineland-Palatinate. And she's also the spokesperson of the working group for queer politics in the local chapter of Die Linke. And without further ado, I would like to hand over, thank you for the reminder. I will try to speak slowly. So without further ado, I would like to hand over the session to our speakers. So how should we proceed? Is there any specific order? If not, I will just follow the order in the poster. So we will start with Sonny, and then Sam, and then Arul, and then Melanie. A note from the organizer. My apologies for making this mistake as well. Please try to speak rather slowly so that our interpreters friends can translate, can interpret your speech comfortably. And then in the interest of time, please keep your talk for 15 to 17 minutes, and then we can have the rest of the time for a lively Q&A session with other comrades, with other participants. So without further ado, first I would like to hand it over to Comrade Sonny. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ikra, and thanks to the organizers of the conference. Can I use the share screen? So
sure.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So where it is? Okay. Is it? Okay. I'm looking for to make it bigger. This one. Just make it bigger. Okay, that's right. Well, when we first discussed this topic for Socialism 2021 with the other organizing parties of the conference, we did not know that we will be intervening in the May 9, 2022 elections in the Philippines for the top posts, the presidency and the vice presidency. We used to intervene by running candidates for the Senate, the House of Representatives, through the party list system and at the local level. But we saw the opportunity of, when President Rodrigo Duterte cannot run for the second time, and almost all of the candidates, this is our candidate, and almost all of the candidates, except perhaps this Vice President Leni Robredo, are all enablers of the Duterte regime. They supported Duterte, including his war on drugs, which already killed 6,000 people, according to government official reports, and almost 10,000 more. We include the extrajudicial killings. This time around, our party fielded almost a complete slate. Our slate consists of Labor leader Calio de Guzman from the BMP, Walden Bello, who was also a speaker in this conference. He's the activist parliamentarian. He was in Congress before, and also the LABANMASA chairperson. Workers advocate Luke Spiritu, and two senators from the Green movements, environmentalists Roy Cabonegro and David De Angelo. We are also running as PLM party list in Congress with nominees coming from public sector unions, people's organizations, women, and urban poor groups. Party lists are national or sectoral organizations which are provided 20% of the seats in Congress or the lower house. It started as organizations for the marginalized sectors and whose representatives come from the marginalized sectors too. The party list system is part of the gain of the EDSA People's Power Revolution that overthrew Marcos in 1986. But since Lydie also was a speaker in this conference, and she's the second nominee of the PLM party list. But since 2013, the party list system has been hijacked by the traditional politicians, which we call trapos, rags in Spanish, and the political dynasties. There was a Supreme Court decision which reversed its formal ruling in 2001 that only the marginalized sectors could run in the party list. The court...
Recording in progress.
Yes, the court allowed the representatives to come even from the political dynasties. We used to have two representatives in Congress starting in 1998 until 2006, when the hijacking by political dynasties started to happen. Most of the party lists now are run by traditional politicians, but we're still fighting because we want to use the electoral campaign to explain our programs to more and more people. We also have local candidates contesting local and political clans and dynasties in several areas in the Philippines. Fielding candidates for top posts is a bold and daring move for left groups in the Philippines. It has never been done before. This is the first time that it's happening. The closest experience we had is the running of 8 senatorial candidates by Partido ng Bayan in 1987, shortly after the EDSA People's Power Revolution. But PNB's, this Partido ng Bayan's failure to gain even a single seat created a political trauma for the left. While it was due to a lot of factors, including the left's boycott of the 1986 election with Cory Aquino against the dictator Marcos, the left saw it as an untimely, even adventurous exercise. So from there on, the norm of left electoral participation shifted to a strategy of supporting bourgeois allies or supporting the lesser evil candidates who can institute reforms and establish a liberal dispensation that will allow left groups and marginalized parties to exist and expand its ranks. So that's why left groups, for instance, supported Estrada in 1998. He was a very corrupt president who was jailed before his term ended, followed by Gloria Macapagal-Arroyo, who was also supported by the left in what is called now the EDSA II People's Power Revolution. She's also very corrupt and was also jailed during the Noynoy Aquino's time. So this is Noynoy Aquino, followed by Rodrigo Duterte, the most corrupt of them all, compared to the Marcos, and the most bloodthirsty president since Marcos. So in this election, we are leaving behind the lesser evil versus the main evil strategy. Some don't want to call it, lesser evil. Okay, lesser bourgeois candidate. If we're talking about Lenny, for instance, Lenny Robredo, the vice president. We are leaving behind that strategy. We are introducing a new strategy of running socialist or left candidates for top national positions in order to highlight our differences programmatically and tactically with all trapo, traditional politicians, and elite candidates. So this was a photo when we filed the certificate of candidacy of our president and the senators and party list. And the slogan is manggagawa naman, or labor first, roughly, for 2022. Because as you mentioned, this is a class struggle, and we're pitting the broad working class as against the elite classes who have ruled the Philippines for a long time. Because we see that if we continue with the old strategy, we will be merely continuing the cycle of money, popularity, dynastic politics that has come to monopolize elections. And the cycle has even taken its toll in the national psyche. So people are even saying, how can you win when you don't have money? So that's a main question that people have been asking us in fielding candidates at the top posts. But by running for the top posts, we are able to present our program and our differences with the trapo and elite candidates, especially during televised debates. These are photos of coming from the media who also almost always cover our events. So when other presidential candidates are covered, they also cover the talks, speeches from Leody de Guzman, from Walden Bello, even me as sort of the campaign manager of the whole thing, discussing the platform. So it became also a vehicle for us to explain our platform to the massa. And we also learn from the lessons of Black electoral intervention in Latin America. In Bolivia, Evo Morales a socialist campesino organizer and leader of the majority indigenous group, ran for president a number of times, starting in 2002 and won in 2005. Ignacio Lula, a metal union leader and head of PITE, the Workers' Party, ran for president 3 times before winning in 2002. So the left intervened in the presidential elections early on. They may not have won the first few times, but a series of interventions led to successes, mainly due to the deteriorating crisis brought about by bourgeois and capitalist regimes and capitalism itself. The masses learned from experience that they need to elect leaders who can put forward alternative platforms to that of the elite regimes. The strategy of directly confronting Trapo and elite candidates also includes building a number of coalitions and alliances or forming a genuine united front against the main Trapo and elite candidates. The genuine opposition will be founded on a united front with the various sectors of the masses. That's a real united front, not with the Trapos and the elites, especially those who are enablers of the Duterte regime. PLM's United Front is around a socialist, labor, green, progressive platform. It is building a fighting machinery around a set of platform demands that address the issues of the working people, the environmentalists, women, LGBTQIA+, and other marginalized sectors. The main alliance within the PLM ticket is a socialist alliance with LABANMASA, headed by Walden Bello himself. LABANMASA is a broad socialist coalition in the country composed of different political blocs and individuals with socialist orientation and advocates. Actually, we're running under the 13-point electoral platform drafted by LABANMASA together with our party. And we adopted it as part of the updating of our Plataforma ng Masa, or platform of the masses. And it's, as you can see, it consists of the economic platform, political platform, and social development platform. The main aspects of which is the end of the neoliberal policies and the reorienting of the economy to meet domestic needs rather than production for profits and exports. Workers' control is a major, is part of our major demand, which is establishment of unions and workers' committees parallel to corporate boards for policy and daily operations. This also includes the demand for the ban of contractualization and through the prohibition of the third party or manpower agencies in the industries. The small farmers control, I think this was also explained by Ed Tadem. The wealth tax is a major demand, which is also now part of the issues that are also being discussed in the media. We are for the imposing of a wealth tax on the 300 to 500 rich Filipinos with net worth of above 100 million pesos. So we can have at least 1 trillion pesos that we can use for social welfare programs. I won't go much further in here, and this can be part of the discussion that we can during the Q&A. So in terms of the Socialist Green, the second is the Socialist Green Alliance with environment groups. These are the environment groups that have joined our alliance, and it's a Socialist Green Alliance. Our two senatorial leaders are leaders of these grassroots-based green groups and parties. So we have drafted a Socialist Green Manifesto, which we are also using as educational material for our members. Of course, there is also the Labor Alliance, represented by these are candidates. Some of these candidates are outside our party, so we call them. Some of them we consider as guest candidates. There is the Labor Alliance, represented by our own Luke Spirito, but we have some from other labor groups, Elmer Labog, the Federation of Free Workers, People's Lawyer Nery Colmenares, and of course the Progressive Alliance with anti-Duterte and anti-Marcos forces, which include human rights lawyer Chel Diokno, opposition leader, she's a senator now, Risa Hontiveros, jailed opposition stalwart, still in jail, one of those who were immediately imprisoned by
Comrade Sonny, please wrap up. Thank you.
Yes, I'm wrapping up, and some other women leaders who are not here. The coalition and alliances that are being formed can be summed up. We sum it up as a lead alliance, which is a labor, ecologist, and democratic alliance. This is the strategy that we are using to pursue our electoral struggle. I'll finish with that.
Thank you so much, Comrade Sonny, for your enlightening talk on the Philippine left and its electoral strategies. I think the point about going beyond lesser realism is an important note. United front of the oppressed and working people as a strategy in elections. Next, we have Comrade Sam Went from Socialist Alliance Australia. So, Comrade Sam, your turn.
Thank you very much, comrades, and greetings to you from Fremantle, or Walyalup, as the area is traditionally known in the Noongar language here in the land of the Whadjuk Noongar people in the southwest of Western Australia. Firstly, a big thank you to all the participating organisations and to the conference organisers for making this conference come together. It's been really stimulating, interesting discussion. I have a reputation for speaking too long and for speaking too fast, so I'll try to slow down and keep to my time limit. I also want to especially thank the comrades in the PSM who I got a chance to meet 10 years ago now and saw the fantastic work that they do around the place. All right, I've shared my presentation in the chat box. You see a link there to a Google document, so you can read that at your leisure if you would like to. I do also have some slides, so I'll ask the tech team to enable me to do screen sharing. The slides aren't critical to understanding the presentation, they're really just to illustrate it, but I'll put them up in a moment anyway. Okay, the other thing I was going to, before I dive into the talk, I was going to say that there's two things that shape my presentation. First is it's going to be fairly general in nature, so I hope I'm not telling people too much what they know already. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it will necessarily be shaped by the experience of trying to be a socialist activist, being a socialist activist for 30 years now in an imperialist country, and a very particular imperialist country at that. And that's the experience of Australia. So there's two things I won't be going into in a great deal of detail. One is our election campaign that we've got coming up in Australia. It's probably very specific to Australia. Nonetheless, I've been a candidate many times. In fact, I have a friend that jokes that I have run for parliament more times than most people run for a bus. So I'm very happy to discuss the particularities of an Australian election campaign in discussion time, if that's what people would like. I should say too that something that makes Australian election campaigns say different to the Philippines and Europe and a number of European countries is ours is a very parliamentary system. So we don't have the opportunity to centre a campaign around a high profile and charismatic and competent presidential candidate. The other, bearing in mind that the topic of this panel is the left and elections, contradictions and struggles. There's another interesting contradiction, which I won't be going into in detail, but I think is an important one to discuss nonetheless, and that may come up in discussion, is what should be the attitude of socialists who get elected in a position where they're in a position to support a minority centre-left government. That could be a whole big discussion on its own, and also I don't want to be trying to tell the comrades, a comrade like Melanie and the comrades in Delinka how to do their work, because they have more experience of that question than we do. We have members who are have been elected at the council level, local government or municipal level, including myself on 3 occasions, and others around the country, but not at the state or federal level, as in the case in Germany and other countries. All right, so I'll just go to screen sharing right now. And hopefully that's working. All right, I'm going to assume that the slide sharing or the screen sharing is working and you can see the slide. So the 4 topics that I was going to look at in addressing this question, the left and elections, contradictions and challenges, are 1, elections as a necessary site of struggle; 2, neoliberalism and the crisis of social democracy, because this particularly shapes how we intervene in elections in all the imperialist countries, including Australia. Thirdly, I want to look briefly at how we should understand the Corbyn and Sanders experiences, because this has particularly dominated discussion in both the English-speaking and imperialist English-speaking countries. And I wanted to also refer to the recent and upcoming presidential elections in France, which I won't pretend to be an expert on, but I'm reasonably familiar with French politics, and I did a thesis on the 2017 French presidential elections. And then fourthly, ask the question, what kind of political force do we need? Okay, so part 1, elections as a necessary site of struggle. Well, I don't think I need to explain how compromised and imperfect capitalist democracy is everywhere, least of all in imperialist countries like my own. Countries that preach democracy, and we heard this from Vijay Prashad in the previous session, that preach democracy while enforcing a fundamentally unequal, violent and undemocratic system on 85% of the world's population. So for us socialists in the imperialist countries, where working people are thrown a few crumbs of material privilege and oftentimes a bit more democratic space, we have a pressing and constant duty to explain this reality, the imperialist reality, to the working class in our own countries. However, to dismiss participation in the electoral process, except in contexts where they are completely discredited under conditions of dictatorship, for instance, would be an ultra-left error of the highest order. We often say that socialists should be prepared to use every platform they can in order to spread their ideas. And this is certainly true, but it's deeper and more profound than this, and it relates to the history of how working people won the right to vote. For all people's cynicism about politicians and politics, elections and parliament, it's still where they look to for change, most of them anyway, and it's the framework within which they conceive of the possibility of a government of, by and for working people. This, I would say, is the legacy or contradiction of the great struggle by working people for the right to vote, the so-called universal suffrage struggle. Firstly, among working men in the imperialist countries, before extending to women, people of colour, and also having its manifestation in the struggles for national liberation in the rest of the world. Now, the achievements and limitations of those struggles against capitalism, but not yet surpassing it, with the exceptions that we know about, such as Cuba and elsewhere, these are the terrain, the political terrain on which we fight for our ideas. And while I don't want to be too prescriptive about how future socialist revolutions might unfold, socialists can't assume that in times of crisis, the masses of people will pole vault over existing parliamentary and other state institutions, quickly brushing them aside through the establishment of comprehensive new institutions of participatory popular power. At the same time, has already been alluded to by our host, it won't be sufficient just to elect a left government that seeks to serve the interests of the majority and do what is required to stop runaway global warming. We know that the big capitalists are not going to peacefully allow any parliament to legislate away their vice-like grip over our economies and societies. But for many people, I would argue, that is a lesson that they are going to have to learn over time, and that they will have to learn it in real time. Such a government will have to be pushed or defended, or most likely both, by people taking to the streets in their millions, and by workers taking control of the very enterprises that capitalists may try to shut down in order to sabotage the economy and bring down the government. And we've seen this played out in a number of countries already. This may very well be the prism through which revolutionary change, revolutionary rupture emerges. Smashing the state and forging a new one is unlikely, I suspect, to be as simple as making a cup of instant coffee. Instead, it may be a much more drawn out and complicated process in which new grassroots organizational forms emerge. Some existing state institutions are fought over and transformed, and others are abolished. Complicated processes of dual power. This certainly seems to be the experience of Latin America, particularly Venezuela and Bolivia, and more recently in Sudan, where a network of resistance committees have formed and have had to repel on multiple occasions attempts by the military to overthrow the civilian government. And I suspect that this will be just as true, perhaps even more true, in imperialist countries. That remains to be seen. Sorry, I didn't show the slide there. So that was my first slide illustrating those themes in that first point. Okay, now to part two, neoliberalism and the crisis of social democracy. As working people won the right to vote, it presented capitalists with a new challenge. In order to maintain their ideological hegemony, they needed to channel working people's aspirations into support for pro-capitalist parties at the ballot box. Indeed, the art of politics for the vast majority of politicians in all of our countries, I imagine, consists of pretending to represent the people while actually governing on behalf of the capitalists. In the imperialist countries, a vital component in this process was the formation, over 100 years ago, of the social democratic parties. In my country, it was the Australian Labor Party. With their promise of a far-off incremental transition to socialism, but more importantly, a social compact in which workers got a return of the spoils in return for social peace. I should add that social compact also required ultimately support for imperialism. Now, this is not to deny that the social democratic parties have at times had layers of genuine socialist activists in their ranks, and I should add, sometimes been the vector through which important changes happened. But overall, their historically determined function, I would say, has been to serve as the backup or the spare tire of capitalism, both in the form of their administrations and, very importantly, ideologically. But neoliberalism has profoundly disrupted this stability, this political stability in the imperialist countries. And it is most sharply manifested in the crisis of social democracy. It's not just that the long-term vote for these parties has declined, but their loyal or rusted on support base, as it often is said in Australia, has diminished even more, and the electorate has become a lot more volatile as a result. With the end of the post-Second World War economic boom, which was a feature in the imperialist countries, capitalism has sought to maintain its absolute profits by suppressing wage growth and reallocating government expenditure from the welfare state into corporate handouts, along with the systematic privatisation, deregulation and contracting out. And everywhere, and without exception in the imperialist countries, I believe, I'm happy to be corrected on this, the dominant social democratic parties have complied. And if you just have a look at the slide, that shows the gap between profits, growing productivity and wages in the United States. And you can see very clearly how in the mid-1970s, wages started to fall behind productivity. And what that means is, bear in mind, of course, that national income can be divided in only one of two ways, either to profits or to wages. So that gap that you see on the slide, that is how the profit share of national income in the United States has grown. Now, it's a similar story in all the imperialist countries, but it's particularly bad in the United States. In Australia, not quite so bad, but similar. And that also means that the predominant struggles where they've happened in the imperialist countries have been defensive struggles to hang on to those gains that came in the post-war years, expressed particularly in the form of the welfare state. Of course, I know that in the rest of the world, this attempt to maintain profit is personified in the structural adjustment programs imposed by the World Bank and other institutions. Well, the primary beneficiary of this process and the rising anger and sense of alienation from mainstream politics has been the far right. The emergence and growth of far-right parties is aided by their favourable coverage in the capitalist media and the fact that their favourite talking points, such as racism and the scapegoating of refugees, have already become stock in trade for the established pro-capitalist parties. This leads me to make an obvious but important point. The emergence of anti-capitalist political projects that can tap into this popular frustration and really break through in the electoral arena will arise when there is also sustained mass struggle. So there's no shortcut or gimmick that'll get us around this. We feel this very sharply in Australia, which is undoubtedly one of the most conservative and wealthy of the imperialist countries. So even though the far left or the anti-capitalist left in the US and France and Germany and Britain have their challenges, I can tell comrades, frankly, we look at their situations with a certain amount of envy. Well, flowing on from that, I want to look at how we should understand the Corbyn and Sanders experiences. As I said at the outset, I won't claim to be an expert on this topic, but inevitably in Australia, we pay a lot of attention to what happens in the US and the UK. Not just because of the importance of these countries in world politics, but because our capitalist class is tightly tied to these countries. It's not just a cultural or linguistic question, but our country is tightly tied to the US and the UK through a high degree of interpenetration of foreign direct investment and military cooperation as part of what I would call an Anglo-imperialist alliance, which was most recently strengthened by the AUKUS alliance or the AUKUS agreement and its attempt to confront and contain China. Now, many of us were disappointed by the relative defeats of the Sanders and Corbyn projects. And of course, there are legitimate criticisms that we could make of their
Comrade
tactics.
Sam, please wrap up. Thank you.
Sure. And even more fundamental strategic policy questions. However, our disappointment or criticisms have to be set in context. It reflects an illusion in parliamentary politics to think that they could have won, if they'd only done one thing or another thing better, that they would have done a lot better. In the case of both Sanders and Corbyn, they won a mass base, but not yet a majority base in the working class. It's interesting to compare this with the situation in France and with the French presidential elections. And you can just see that picture on the slide, which shows just how fragmented politics is in France. And the mark in red is the vote achieved by the far left candidate, Jean-Luc Mélenchon, who got about 20%. And I think in that sort of political system, you get a much more accurate reflection of the relative support base of these parties. I think when looking at the experience of Sanders and Corbyn, I think we should understand that whatever role they play as individuals now, we should hope that they become stepping stones towards a growing number of working people grasping the need for their own political organisation, independent of capital influence. That should be the yardstick by which we judge these processes. So to conclude, what kind of political force we need? These points are very general, but firstly and everywhere, we need an anti-capitalist force that subordinates electoral activity to mass struggle. We shouldn't see ourselves as seeking to be the representatives in Parliament of mass struggle, but more our electoral activity seeking to facilitate it. Secondly, and starting where I began, I think it's very important that we seek to present socialism as an extension of democracy. Of course, that's fundamentally what socialism is, but socialists must be the best democrats as we attempt to convince people that the only path to creating a just society that lives in peace with the planet is by extending democracy to the economy. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you so much, Comrade Sam, for your talk, especially for your reflection on the struggle of socialists in the imperialist core, including your country, Australia. So thank you so much for that. Moving on, we will switch to Comrade Arul from PSM, Malaysia. Comrade Arul, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Anugrah. I mean, looking at presentation by Comrade Sam and Sonny, I think PSM, a party which has never won elections using its own logo, so I think quite humble to be with fellow comrades. Especially Sonny, it was so impressive to see you have a team for to take on the powers to be, you know, and Sam, of course, for winning the council election a few times. In consecutive times, you know, and of course look forward to Melanie's performance, because she is part of the party which has ruled, has tasted power, you know, at least, you know. So let me go into, let me share screen. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay, let me go into, okay. Comrades, the left and election, contradiction and challenges. Okay, I'm going to talk about, of course, the Malaysian experience, because I think, as Marx says, you have to deal with the bourgeoisie of your own country. You have to get rid of your capitalists of your own country. So in that sense, you know, so this is going to be a presentation of PSM. I know many of my PSM comrades who are watching will be, I mean, I've been very depressed over these years because of our election performance. So I want to start with this issue about vision clear, vision blurred. Why do I say this? If you ask this question to any PSM members, why do you stand in elections? They will tell you one of this. They say, because we are a political party, we have to stand in election, or popularize the party, the flag, or to use the election to highlight other issues, you know, to use the election to highlight minimum wage issues, housing issues and all that. And or to give people options. But finally, they hardly use this one to win power, you know. Election is all about winning power, but this is, of course, the last thing which you normally think about, because it's something like very far away from you. Why I use this word mission clear, vision blurred, or is it vision blurred as well? If you look at what Marx has said, the role of a socialist party, Marx's definition is the role of a socialist party, the workers' party, the communist party. Their role is very clear. One is to formation of the proletariat into a class, overthrow the capitalist class, and working class capture power, you know. Of course, we are already stuck in the first question. How do you bring all the workers together? Like in Malaysia, how do you bring the working class together? How do you bring the Muslim, non-Muslim workers together, Malaysian workers? You know, this is a big question. So, and of course, in PSM, we know that socialism has the two souls. One is socialism from above, one is socialism from below. PSM takes the position of this, taking political and economic power from the capitalist party through a class struggle led from below by the working class and the common people. Okay, this is the party position. That means building a class struggle from below with the working class and the common people. So if we ask this question again to every PSM member, why do you stand in election? Everybody gives this answer to take over political power, then I think the party will be very clear. Okay, so every time, you know, when you go into a plantation and when you handle workers' issue, we are thinking about taking over political power, then we become very clear why we are as a political party. So the strategies need to be clear. Now, how do you take over power? When you come to this question, go into so many debates. How, you know? Is the means greater than the goal? What tactics do you use? Does the means justify the end? Does the end justify the means? Is it black or white cat as long as it catches the mouse? You know, you have all this contradiction, you know. So you'll be so tired discussing all this, even though you're very, very far away from capturing power. You know, so you're so far from capturing power, you are so tired arguing tactics, how to do this and do that. And you know, in that process, you actually get very tired even before the election comes. So frequently asked questions on elections here within the party would be, one main concept we use is pilihan raya atau jalan raya. Do you election or revolution, or to the street, or you know, through the ballot box? I think a lot of our Indonesian comrades are familiar with this term. Other thing, of course, the whole argument about bourgeois polymer, should we participate, you know. Even in recently, our Pemuda Socialists also did raise some issues like that. Election fraud, you know, election funding, you know, all the parties are so rich, how are you going to win elections? And another thing about when PSM joins an election, we are splitting the votes of the lesser of the evil, you know, so we shouldn't split the votes. So frequently asked questions on elections. Of course, a lot of younger people today are calling for election to be boycotted, because whoever you chooses, they rob from the people, they steal from the people, you know. So why have elections at all, you know? So this whole question about election and revolution, if you look at the argument about Rosa Luxembourg spoke very strongly about. She says, if you are an election party, you should do some work. If you are a revolutionary party, you should do something else, you know. There was this whole debate. There is a distinction between what is an election party and what is a revolutionary party. But Rosa also said this. Let me read this. He said the debate is not about whether socialists are for reforms or whether socialists should run their backs on electoral system. As socialists, we fight for all reforms. We fight for all reforms that improve the condition of life of the workers under capitalism and give workers the confidence to fight for more. So that means, but any real fight for reforms requires struggle to achieve them. This is exactly what PSM is doing. Reformists tell workers to sit passively, wait for election. We do. But the question is, do we only do this? You know, this is the question. Yes, as socialists, we fight for all reform to improve the condition of life of the workers under capitalism. And this is what we are doing, and we continue to do that, you know. So for me, the whole question about election or revolution, this debate is a complete waste of time. Okay, why do I say that, you know? Because for either, you need a mass political support. You want to follow a revolutionary part or an election part, you need to do mass political work. You need mass movement of organization, trade unions, and supporting your cause. You need a clear-headed political party or political movement. We did talk about the Vanguard Party, but I'm talking about a clear political party or a political movement. So to do all these three, even you want to win elections or even you want to go through a revolutionary part, you have to do all this work. So you still need to do build coalitions, use propaganda, use social media, all the things under the sun, you know. So my argument is we should just leave this debate aside and do all the work which is needed and see what are the conditions, the objective conditions are in front of us. Okay, this is a classic picture of a PSM rally. This is right outside the Malaysian Parliament. PSM is very good in mobilizing the masses outside the Parliament. Of course, the question is, when are we going to enter the Parliament? You know, is the struggle going to end just outside the Parliament all the time, over and over, you know? So this is the big dilemma put forward to our comrades. If you look historically, if you look on the left and the right, you can see that leftist parties coming to power has before this always been through revolution, and in this recent years, it all has been through election. Nobody would have expected the Maoist party of Nepal, who's been fighting, you know, a Maoist struggle, finally comes to power, not through a Maoist struggle, you know, they win through elections, you know. So today, I think the left should be very clear. The road forward is how do you win elections? That's what I'm coming to my argument. No? So we should really understand the latest is that we have a new Castro from Honduras. how do you take over power? So we need to take over power by winning an election, you know. So how the question now comes, we need to start winning elections. Okay, I just want to throw some word. Losing election is not an option, because I know in many left parties, after some time you get convenient about losing election. You talk about, yeah, like PSM, you know, we are brave to lose deposits. You know, it's okay, let's go on, you know, people get very cynical. So we should go against the mentality that losing in election is not an option. Losing election cannot be a strategy. Losing election is depressing and morally frustrating, you know, so the party have to be clear that we have to start winning election. We have to find ways to win elections. The myth is over. Mythos, and the myth is over. Why do I say this? Because in Malaysia, we used to argue before this, there is no way you can win election through the ballot box. We always were inspired by the Marcos, People's Power, 96, Suharto, Reformasi, 98, reforms in Thailand, 97, and we were hoping that in Malaysia, a revolution will happen, but it never took place. People's revolution never took place. There were a lot of people's movement. Finally, we said the Barisan Nasional can never be defeated in an election. That was our position, you know. Now, we always said there will be no peaceful transition of power. But today, there was a change of power. There was a peaceful transition of power. So for the people of Malaysia to say that you cannot win by election is something you can't use anymore. So the myth is over. So in the GE14, the last general election, the Barisan Nasional, 60 years in power, it ended. New coalition called Pakatan Harapan took over. And this is how Pakatan won. You need 112 seats to win a simple majority. They got, you know, they won the election. If you look at, but now it is getting too often, you know. Now, you know, after the fall of Pakatan Barisan Nasional, and our change of government is not like Tahrir Square, you know, in Egypt, Tahrir Square. First is called Sheraton Move, you know. For those who are not in Malaysia, Sheraton Move is not a place of a great where struggle took place. Sheraton Move is actually a hotel. The opposition leaders come there, sit down, discuss, and how they topple the government. So a change of government took place through Sheraton Hotel, not through People's Power. Now it's becoming more frequent, you know. 2020, we had the Sheraton Move. 2021, we had another change of government. We call it recycle government because the Prime Minister changed, 95% of the cabinet remained, you know. So that is the situation we have today. What has happened since then is the king has become more powerful. SDs, no? Statutory Declaration is more powerful than Parliament. You just need SD to be in power, you know. A person who has a party which has the most number of SD collected, Statutory Declaration, a piece of paper, give it to the king, they come to the power. They don't go to the Parliament to seek a confidence vote. And of course, their greatest ally has been the COVID. COVID assisted the ruling party to declare emergency, stop elections, to be in power. Okay, there's only 3 ways PSM can win elections. Okay, number 1, PSM can win election if we join a coalition which we can win seats and come to power. In Malaysian history, no single party has ever won elections. Only coalitions win elections. So we need to find a coalition. Or we have to form a coalition. Change the election system from first past the post to the proportional representative system. Like, you know, in Philippines, we talk about the party list. Even in Australia, here we have the first past the post. And with the first past the post, it's almost impossible for us to win elections. Of course, win over mass people support, you know, which is what we are working on, you know. And this is the 3 uphill tasks is how PSM can win elections in Malaysia. Besides that, out of the 222 parliament seats, 125 seats are in the rural places, 43 in urban places, and 54 seats in semi-urban places. Our strategies tell us we can only stand in semi-urban seats, 54 places, which means there is no way with this scenario you can win elections. take over power, unless you work with other parties. And of course, the semi-urban and urban seats are so crowded field, so many people want to stand there, but very few people want to stand in the rural areas, which is dominated by the UMNO, which is a right-wing Malay party, and PAS, which is an Islamic party. Out of the 125 seats in the rural seats, which I mentioned, most of the seats are like this, Malay seats. So it's very racially divided. So you have to win seats. You have to go into racial politics. So you have what you call.
Comrade Arul, please wrap up. Thank you.
Yeah, sure, comrade. Thank you. Permanent racism, and so you need permanent racism, or permanently you lose election. So this is what we have. So just concluding, so losing election is not an option. People say PSM is not a serious political contender in election. There are two principles, not reality-based. We should join a popular coalition like Pakatan Harapan. PSM known for election. PSM is only good for service center work and NGO kind of work, PSM thinks that our problem is standing in election seems not the priority of the party. Ready to lose election and losing deposits seems to be accepted reluctantly. And weak coalition partners, we got hardly any coalition partners in the left, very few, very weak. Class politics is like Ethiopian in Malaysia, fighting for class politics. And poor party in an expensive business. So let me go to two important things, PSM glaring strengths and failures. We always say PSM is a party with good and sound policies. But then people say we've got two issues. They say we don't know how to make our policies popular. Second thing people say, anyway, who cares of good policies as long as you're not going to capture power? What is the use of having very good policies when anyway you're not going to capture power? Second issue is, we always say PSM is a grassroots-based party, massive victory in many issues. We want many issues like minimum wage, but as long as our economic struggle does not transform into a political victories, all these small victories are wasted. Most people admire PSM work but join other political parties because they think PSM is not really into election. So let me go to my, go very fast, Anugrah, this last part. Recently in 2020, we came up with what declaration thrown out. We want, in 10 years' time, PSM plans to be the main opposition party in parliament. We had 6 missions. We need to become a multiracial party and all that. I'll just go very fast on this. Scrap the perception that PSM is an NGO. This is our target in the next 10 years. This is also our target. So in the election, we put 5 seats. We have to win 5 seats in the next election. 2026 be a strong coalition. 2028 win 60 seats and 100 seats. But now, how are we going to do that? So this is concluding what Lenin said. Lenin said electoral work should not be seen as a sideline activity. It was not a routine task, but a central task of the party. Do PSM see election work as a central task of the party? Okay, and Lenin said educating, training, organizing is the objective of the Bolshevik revolution. So a lot of time parties like PSM don't see election as a central part of the party. Okay, going to my last 2 slides. What we need to do, consciously work in winning election, because currently PSM only does election work when election is near. Number 2, the election bureau is the most weakest bureau in the PSM, and it should be the most strongest. Okay, so today in PSM, election bureau only normally discussed during any other business. So it should be the main bureau. PSM activists need to be reset and routine in becoming candidates with the mission to win political power, not just economic power. In order to do that, PSM needs to create the subjective condition to win elections. The party needs to identify nature, build ideological conscious activists as candidates. My suggestion is we should have 50 candidates. Each candidate give them 10 members and they go and do work 3 to 5 years. In that sense, 500 of our party members will be all the time doing work, election work, how to win power, So the party has to seriously groom and nurture 50 election candidates. Doing election work doesn't mean, you just go wave hands, shake hands with people. Doing election work is also doing ideological work, doing what we are doing now, but only thing we are focused on election. So that's it. We need to start winning elections, comrades. We have come a long way, and as Kay says, let's be realistic and try the impossible. And Kumar, in the first session, the opening remark, he says philosophers have interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it. I just wanted to add that the point, however, is also to win political power. Win election is a central point of it. Thank you, comrades. Sorry for taking a bit more time. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Comrade Aru, for your colorful presentation on the Malaysian left. And I believe many of your points are also something that we can relate with, especially here in Indonesia. Moving on, we will have Comrade Melanie from the Linke as our next speaker. So Comrade Melanie, please, the stage is yours.
Yes, thank you so much. And thank you for having been invited. I think it's super interesting to exchange our point of views. I got excused, I don't have a presentation. I thought it's more a debate with questions, but just as Comrade Sam, I like to talk, so no problem. I can talk and explain you a bit about our elections. I won't talk too general because this year was a big year for the left party because we had lots of elections, and I can tell you up front, it was devastating. We had really bad election results, and we have been analyzing that because we were almost kicked out of the federal parliament. It was super close. And also this spring we had actually state elections, and I was one of the two main candidates for the state election in Rheinland-Pfalz. So that's the state that is close to Luxembourg, France, and Belgium. And yeah, so Comrade Sam said earlier he envies us for our good stand as a left party in Germany. That might be true on federal level, or that was true until the last elections. But in my state, for example, it's super difficult because the state is extremely conservative. And me, for example, I'm in the regional parliament, and I don't know how to state that. There's lots of people who think I'm super radical, which I'm not. I mean, I'm left, of course, and of course I see myself as the voice of the minorities, and of course I'm provocative here and there, but here in my region, as someone from the left party, as a socialist, people are super aggressive. So I have moments when I was running for the left here in the region where people were spitting on me because I tried to have I was speaking somewhere and someone was running towards me and was spitting on me. So it's super aggressive here in the region, and it's super hard during the elections, but we are always trying. I think that is the most important part. We should never give up. We always have to try to win those elections, no matter how bad it looks. So here in this state, for example, you need at least 5% of the votes to become a member of the parliament. And until this year, we always had around 2.5%, 2.8%. So failing to get into the parliament, but still we tried. We had a really good concept for our campaign, but then there was Corona, which was super hard for us because, as you probably all can relate to, we are a party that talks to people. We are the party that is on the streets protesting with the unions, with Fridays for Future. And this was really hard during Corona. I mean, we could not just go from door to door and talk to people because there was a big lockdown. So this was really binding our hands. And yes, also our result then this spring was 2.5%. We did everything. We had a really modern campaign, but also one big point is that here in the region, since we are a very small party here in my state, we don't have lots of money. The other parties, they have thousands of huge posters, and we just have our small posters and maybe some big ones, and just a few people that run around, hang up those posters, getting spat on while we do that. So it was super hard, but it was also fun. That's for me always what keeps me doing what I'm doing. I have fun doing politics because I want to change something. This might sound naive, but I really want to change something. And it's so much fun to run an election campaign with comrades, to meet and to hang up posters and to do brainstorming of what we could do, where we could be provocative. That's what keeps me running, despite the fact that people are so conservative here. Then for the federal parliament, we had the elections end of September. Also here, you need 5% to enter the parliament. Last time, 4 years ago, we had 9.2%. This year, we had 4.9%. We got into the parliament, though. This was like a wonder because 3 of our comrades had, they won their direct mandates, which means in the state where they were running, they had most of the percentage. So in the evening of the elections, it was like a political thriller because we saw, okay, 4.9%, we are out of the parliament. It was devastating, but then those 3 comrades, they won and they pulled us back into the parliament. But now we had 69 people in the federal parliament. Now we're only 39. And of course, we are in the opposition. We are, of course, always provocative and loud, but we almost cut in half, and we will see how this will be. I think it will be hard, but also there we won't give up. So for me, the reasons why this happened, it has various reasons. First of all, sorry, I have 4 kids and they're all trying to sneak up here on me while I'm talking. Corona. As I said before, Corona was a big problem because usually we are, I would say, the only party who really interacts with people. We protest, we have our information booths in the city where we debate with people, we discuss with people, we show them, hey, we are socialists. We are just normal people. You don't have to be scared. We're not eating kids or something because it's, you know, the view that the people have is so different of what we are doing. And sometimes I'm really puzzled and I'm wondering how we change this. So this was not possible during Corona. And of course, then there was the big focus on the Green Party in Germany because of climate change. The Green Party had a huge amount of new voters, of new members, and honestly, in Germany, the Green Party, they're capitalists. I mean, they're capitalists and they have a good name during the climate change. I mean, they're the Green Party, and everyone thought, okay, now I have to vote for the Green Party, but we have so many good solutions to fight against climate change because one of the biggest reasons for climate change is capitalism. And this is also super hard to explain to people that we are also green, left and green. So I think there we lack communication and we are really working hard to change that. Then there was the big focus on the big parties, the Christian Democrats and the Social Democrats. The focus was on their candidates, and we had the impression that people voted for the lesser evil. I saw that earlier in the presentation, and we were kind of forgotten because people thought we can't have the Christian Democrats ruling again. So the left party is small, so we better vote for the Social Democrats. And yeah, so that was a big issue. And then also we had statistics showing that we chose the right topics on our posters. It was climate change, retirement, of course, wages, that they are higher. We chose the right topics, health politics, that the nurses here in Germany, they are not paid well and stuff like that. But still, it didn't help. We are still analyzing. So I'm very curious to hear about all of your views, because we really don't know what the problem was this time. One of the problems that I would say, I would say we are between us, I can say this. We are a pluralistic party. We have lots of different opinions, of course. We have the reformists and the really radical left people in our party, and this is perfect. It has to be like that. A left party, a socialist party has to be like that. Big problem is, though, the left party of Germany is known for their arguments. And of course, we don't argue behind closed doors. We always argue in the press. I don't know if it is like that also in the other countries, but in Germany, the left party is known to be always arguing. And I think that's a big, big issue. And then also we saw statistics that showed the sympathy level of the parties. And of course, we have this really bad right-wing party that is all over the parliaments now too, and they are very strong, the AfD, Alternative for Germany. They don't have lots of sympathy in the people, but the left party also not. And I think that the problem is that we argue so much. Yeah, because who wants to vote for a party that is always arguing and seems like they don't know what they want? I had the impression the voters did not know anymore what they get when they vote for us. Because, for example, we have the debate now. Are we for the corona vaccine or are we against the corona vaccine? We have different voices there, you know, and so the people didn't know anymore what they get. That's a big, big issue. Yes, but what can we do to change that? We are for the moment all over the place in analysis. And in my opinion, we need to start debating all those critical topics transparently, even if it's super heated, but we need to find positions. At least that's for the left party in Germany. We need to have clear positions. And for me, that's how it works in unions also. I'm also not 100% okay with what my party wants. You know, I think no one is. It's just the party that for me has the most, I don't know how to say that in English. They demand for the things that I also want, but there's maybe one or two things that I'm not okay with. But then internally, I can try to change that. But to the outside, since I'm the voice of my party, I have to state whatever my party wants. And that's, I think, something that many people in my party still has to work on. And we have to find clear positions. We have to be clear on what we're demanding. It's not possible that the voters don't know what they get when they vote for us. And then also, we need to learn to act and not to react all the time. Often in the past, the right-wing party, they did something and we reacted. We said, okay, that is not right. We should do it in a different way. But in my opinion, we have to set the tone. We have to be brave enough to say, we need to change the system. We need to make the rich people pay. We shouldn't be afraid of stating that. And I think, at least in Germany, that is a big problem, that we have, that we try to be too tame, that we try to be a second social democrat party. But we are socialists and we shouldn't be afraid to say that. I mean, of course, in Germany, the big issue is also that we have a very difficult history, with Germany being divided in Eastern Germany and Western Germany. We also have very different results in Eastern Germany. I live in Western Germany. People are afraid of the left party. They are afraid of our history, of the wall that divided Germany. And it's difficult to bring Eastern Germany and Western Germany together in regards of the elections, because people in Western Germany still see us as the party that built the wall, and yeah, this is super hard, but still we need to be brave enough to explain people what socialism means, what capitalism means, what capitalism does. And that, for example, when we say we want to tax the rich, that doesn't mean that we want to take away the house of someone or we want to take your car. No, here, for example, we say if someone has €1 million, so a lot of cash on the account, doing nothing with it, they should pay 5% of what they have to the people, so that we can put this money into education, into the health politics, into the health programs and stuff like that. For example, in times of Corona in Germany, the military had to help in the health departments. And everyone was like, yay, awesome, the military is helping. But I was saying, why do we have to do that? Why do we have to put so much money in the military? And why don't we put money in the health? So this is the big debates that we have in Germany. But we are stuck for the moment. We had bad results, although we had the best conditions to have awesome results, because Corona just showed how rotten the system is. But still, we were not able to show this in our results. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm very happy to discuss with you, to answer your questions, and I'm so glad to have heard all your ideas, your perspectives, because I think this can also help us in Germany to do better, because you're right, we are in the federal parliament. This is not something that we should gamble with, and we almost lost it. So again, thank you for being that I'm allowed to be here, and I can't wait to hear your questions and answers. And yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Navani, for your reflection on the Linke's performance in the last German elections. I think it's also very colorful while taking care of your kids. Thank you so much. Now we'll open the Q&A section for our comrades here. We have some questions lined up already in the Q&A section. We have 6 questions so far, and I think for the Q&A session we have 25 minutes. We will spend the last 5 minutes to wrap up the session. So I'm just gonna read 3 questions per round, and then our panelists, our speakers, can respond to those questions. First question. So this is from a PSM member, explaining the situation in Malaysia. When we are in power, right-wing and neoliberal parties, and also a bourgeois reform party serve as the main opposition, and the left suffers from marginalizations. Constituents prefer to vote for reformists because they are not ready and don't see the need for a more radical party, the left in this case. How do we wedge through these 2 big bourgeois parties? So that's the questions. The first question is, how do we wedge through these 2 bourgeois parties? I think this is, I think Comrade Arul from PSM and can answer it, and also Comrade Sam from Socialist Alliance in Australia. Perhaps you can answer that in relation to your experience in Australia and also other imperialist English-speaking countries such as the US and the UK. So that's the first question. Another questions. The second question is also for Comrade Arul. If we give all energy to the election, how we can build up organization for revolution? So that's the second question. The third question is from another comrade in the Philippines. Is the United Front with the Greens, the Socialist Green coalition, a tactical coalition for the elections only, or is it something that lasts longer? Some sections of the left in the Philippines have come behind the liberal capitalist candidate, Leni Robredo, in the name of unity to defeat the Marcos Duterte axis of evil. Should the PLM United Front tactic include Leni Robredo? So that's the third question. So maybe Comrade Arul can answer first, and then Comrade Sam, and then Comrade Sony. And please try to keep your answers brief as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Anugrah. Thanks for the questions. From the question on Malaysia, the first question, basically coalition. To win election, you need to either form a coalition or you work with the coalition. Of course, you work with the lesser of an evil. So in PSM, the choice is in between these 2. Okay, and so if you can't build a coalition on our own, we have targeted 2026 to build our own coalition. If we can't build a coalition on our own, then we have to work with the lesser of the evil. No? But again, that mandate, well, our party members will give us that mandate to work with the lesser of evil. That's always the big question, because they are so frustrated with existing political parties. They say they don't want to do anything, but to win elections, this is something we have to consider. So I think it's a very clear option for us, either A or B. Yeah? To do B, if we have our own coalition strong enough to stand in 222 seats, we should go for that option. But if without that, then you have to work with coalition. And as I presented earlier, no single party, including UMNO, has won an election single-handedly. The second thing from comrades, from the Thai comrade, I think we should, I'm not saying that put all your basket in election. No. What I'm saying that the work you do to win an election and the work you do to do a revolution, the work is almost the same. You need to meet people, you need to organize, you need to work with, you need to do your propaganda stuff, you need to do your newspaper, you need to do your social media, you need to do all the same work. Let it be revolution or let it be election, Then existing conditions, For example, in Thailand, maybe the conditions are not right for an election. Then, of course, the comrades have to see what is based on the objective condition, how the movement have to build, But in Malaysia, I was giving more a question of Malaysia. In Malaysia, we have now resigned to the fact that election is the way forward. Then you need to plan strategy how to win election, Maybe in another 5 to 10 years, if the conditions changes, that, the government become more authoritarian, there's no room for election, maybe things will change, That is the history of struggle, the dialectics of struggle, You don't plan your strategy based on something, okay, on a fixed set of ideas. But I think for a party should be able to move, within these parameters, how you want to build the subjective forces based on the objective conditions. So I think that's how I will look at it. So for Malaysia, I think election, of course, the conditions in Thailand may be different, and comrades in Thailand know how to fight their bourgeois, how to build their own alliances in their fight. Yeah.
Thank you, Comrade Arul. Comrade Sam, please.
Yes, I'll try to answer those questions as best I can. Regarding this thing of, how do we break through when politics is dominated by bourgeois parties in our particular national context? Look, that's certainly the case in Australia. And while we should learn as best we can from other experiences around the world, and while we can always do better, find better ways to communicate our ideas and not be stuck in a rut and always be open. At the same time, we also, picking up the point that Arul just made, is we can't jump ahead of objective circumstances. So for instance, like for us in Australia, I mean, Australia is a wealthy, stable, imperialist country. We dodged the worst of the global financial crisis. So even though there are people that are hurting in Australia, there's no question about it, but it's even compared to other imperialist countries, it's wealthy, stable, and conservative. Now, there won't always be that way, but in that environment, revolutionary socialists are not going to get 30, 40, 50% of the vote overnight. There's no magic solution. We just have to keep plugging away. We keep working. And then when there is crisis and when people are looking for answers, well, then hopefully they'll turn to us. So in our context, for instance, I mean, where I live, we've run every single election we possibly can, and we've built up our support base. But for us, where we are, 2, 3, 4% of the vote is good. That's just how it is. But we're always looking for opportunities to work with others, and so that brings me to the question of the Greens. And it was interesting to see the Green Socialist Alliance stuff from the Philippines. In Australia, most people who are disillusioned with neoliberal politics and are looking to vote to the left, in this country they vote for the Greens. But like in Germany, in Australia, the Greens certainly don't have anti-capitalist politics. There are anti-capitalists inside the Greens, and there are people who in the Greens who are very good activists, oftentimes active in areas where we are not present. So we want to work with those people. And there are plenty of people in the Greens who one day we would hope to be in the same organisation as. But the national leadership of the Greens, their perspective is definitely, they believe in the possibility of green capitalism, to put it bluntly. And more particularly, and this is maybe something that that Melanie might want to comment on, and I know there's been some questions to Melanie that take up this issue. the leader of the Greens here in Australia explicitly says that his ambition is for the Greens to be a junior partner in a Labor Party government. Now, I tend to think that would be catastrophic for the Greens, that would be their death warrant, that they would find themselves locked into a neoliberal government, but they perceive it as being how they become important. So it'd be interesting. So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the Greens. You know, at some point, the Greens in Australia, they'll have to decide. They'll either have to go to the left and become anti-capitalist, or move to the right, or they'll have to split over the issue. But you know, that will come with struggle. That's my sense. We're not immediately faced with this question that I know the comrades in Malaysia have of running on the party, you know, on the party ticket of a different party. I know it was a big struggle for the PSM to be able to run in its own right, you know. So in the Australian context, I could not imagine us, for instance, you know, there's not the possibility of a socialist to run on the Democratic Party line, which is what, you know, Bernie Sanders does and what members and supporters of the DSA do. So that question's not really posed for us. It's easy enough, not super easy, but easy enough for us to be able to run. So we're not confronted with that interesting, and obviously there's a lot of tactical debate about this within the socialist movement in the United States itself about whether running on the Democratic Party line, like Sanders does, is the right thing to do or not. So that's some of the issues to explore.
Thank you, Comrade Sam. And moving on to Comrade Sony, I think there's another question asking. There's another comrade asking the same questions about the possibility of expanding the PLM coalition by including Leni Robredo. So please.
Yes. So there are two questions there: the Greens and then the coalition alliance with Vice President Leni Robredo is also running as president. With the Greens, this is not just a tactical coalition, because the Green groups that we are working with, we have been working with them for quite a long time already in the communities, because these are grassroots-based organizations. So we bring the issue of the environment to the communities and do specific actions. And also, we're sort of starting it because we now did the Socialist Green Manifesto, which outlines the direction of our coalition and also the immediate and long-term demands, part of which, or most part of which, are part of the electoral platform that we are pursuing, like demanding a declaration of climate emergency in the country right now, so we can put up funds for the emergency and use that to protect our communities, adaptation and mitigation policies that will help protect the communities. And we're also talking about setting up of green communes. These are communities that are developed through projects that develop the resilience of the communities to withstand the climate crisis, and also under the control of the community themselves. So community control is really part of it, controlling the forest, controlling the body of water that are a part of the community, and making sure that that we can pursue the Greens project with the people, with us, with the mobilization of the people. And this entails empowering the population and building political power from the grassroots to the all the structures of the government. Now, with regards to the with the coalition with Leni Robredo, part of the context of it is that Leni Robredo came late in filing her candidacy, and we're already, because we thought that it's not sure whether she's running, so we filed the candidacy of our labor leader, Leody de Guzman. And there was a process that we were not invited on, the process of unification of the opposition against Duterte and the Marcoses, Bongbong Marcos, who are running, despite, I understand, our asking the teams of Lenny and all other groups to for that kind of process to continue. And we were very explicit in our statement that we are willing to have a coalition, even regarding talking about one presidential bid, if the platform, if the program of the PLM, the party that we are running, we are now running, will be adopted by this coalition. But having said that, I don't think that it is a closed matter, because we can also build campaigns, we can build united front, even outside the electoral process, or even during the election. Because part of the, we're being accused of trying to sabotage a united front against Marcos and Duterte. But in fact, this is a question of democratic rights of the poor people to intervene in the elections and put forward their platforms. Because as I was talking before, it's been in the national psyche that the poor people cannot intervene in the top post. Should we continue to prolong, to perpetuate that, prejudice against the workers, against the working people? Or should we support them? Now, on the question of that we're weakening the opposition, you see there are big-time capitalists there that are fighting also the Marcos Duterte group, which are also projecting themselves as opposition. I'm speaking of almost everyone there, from Isko Moreno to Manny Pacquiao, the international boxer, and all the others. They are the ones that are really splitting the opposition. Shouldn't it be that the focus of the attack against those splitting the opposition would be on them? Should we not call them to, not to continue with their ambition and let the people decide now? Now, I know there's been talk.
Please wrap up, Comrade Sonny. Thank you.
Yes, but I just want to point out, maybe I will not, I will not comment on others more, because this is a very important topic for us. And I saw one of the Tony Salvador. This is a question connected with us, who's with the Lenny campaign, asking about this. I will just say that we have talks going on the possibility of campaigns, joint campaigns against Marcos and Duterte, and for some aspects of the, for instance, the labor platform that Lenny's forces can also adapt or push forward. It will happen, and I think it's important that this will happen. Just open the doors for us to have talks and discussion, and do not let the big parties intervene, like the Liberal Party, all these bourgeois parties that we're talking about. Let us have a movement, social movement-to-movement talks on these important matters.
Thank you so much, Comrade Sonny. The next round of questions is, most of them are for Comrade Melanie, and I think that will be the last round of session, the last round of questions for this session. So, a comrade from Malaysia asks, can you share your experience of the Linke in coalition governments at state levels with SPD and the Greens in states like Thuringia and Berlin? So that's the first question. Another questions also from another comrade from the Philippines on the Linke's alliance with the Social Democrats and the Greens, and the breakup of this alliance. And there's also another questions on the electoral strategy of the Linke. This comrade here asking, why do you focus on minorities when you want to win elections? You need masses. The working class is a huge group in Germany. Do you think climate change and identity politics are key topics for the workers in the Volkswagen car factories? And I think so. That's the third question, and I think that's also links with another questions about racism and how the left deals with that. So please.
I start with the last two. First of all, thank you for the questions. I start with the last two ones because that's a big debate in the party. Because, for example, I am responsible for the queer politics in my region, and I think it's super important. And of course, I also walk with if there's a protest of the unions, you know, I'm also organized in a union. And I think that's for us the same also with anti-fascism or anti-racism. For us, that's a part of our DNA, you know. I mean, we fight for minorities, and in my opinion, we fight, of course, we fight for workers' rights, but there's also so many queer workers or workers that have to face racism. And I think those topics should go hand in hand. Maybe I expressed myself wrong. We did not just focus on minorities, but I think for us, we have to be the voice of the, or let's say the lobby for the people that don't have a lobby, for the people that don't have a voice in the parliaments, which means poorer people, definitely also workers, because I mean, all the parties always say, of course, we want you to have more money, but do they really push that through as soon as they are in the parliament? Usually they just want to give money to the big corporations. I remember the big bank crisis, and also now during Corona, people lost their jobs, they lost their homes. And what did the parliament do? They decided to give money to the big airlines. So we definitely work. We have to fight for workers. We have to fight also for minorities, for people that are discriminated and face racism. And that's all, in my opinion, topics that we should not, there should not be a competition between those topics. I think they all go together, and that's really, really important. For the coalitions, so in the federal parliament, in the Bundestag, we have always been in the opposition. We've never been a part of the government. And the challenge for us now, because there will be the Green Party, the Social Democrats and the Liberals, they form the new government, and we will be in the opposition, which will be a little bit tricky to be in the opposition of the Green Party and the Social Democrats, because of course they also demand partly the same things that we do, but we usually go a step further. I mean, they demand that wages are up to, like, let's say €12, and we want 13 or 14, so that the retirement is also something you can live with, and that you don't have to be, I don't know, you are 70 years old and you have to have a small job in order to survive. That's impossible in a rich country like Germany. And I think this will be a big challenge, to be in the opposition of the Social Democrats and the Green Party. And maybe I was a little bit too harsh. I mean, the Green Party, of course, they also have a left wing. A good friend of mine, she's in the Green Party in Berlin, and they are also left there, but still, in my opinion, their views are very capitalist. When they talk about climate change and how to stop that, they always say, okay, people have to change their ways of living. Everyone should buy organic food. No one should drive a diesel car. I'm sorry, but this falls mainly on the feet of the poor people. Why do people always have to change first? In my opinion, it's big corporations that have to change their way of production. It's not okay that we can buy T-shirts here in Germany for €2 or €3 that were produced in countries that are thousands and thousands of kilometers away, produced under bad working conditions. That's where Germany is such an arrogant country. And in my opinion, the Green Party doesn't see the root of the problem, like mass production of animals. That's one of the big problems in climate change. But do they target that? No. They just want prices of meat to be taxed and meat to be more expensive. But that doesn't solve the problem, because then there's people, I mean, I'm a vegan, I don't buy meat, but then people have trouble buying meat because it is too expensive. And so it's only, again, the companies that profit, and nothing will change. So, but yeah, in Berlin, we are actually in the government, and also, for example, in Thüringen, it's all Eastern Germany, there we are in the government. And yeah, of course, there are compromises. always. If you have a coalition with the Social Democrats, of course, you can't push everything through. But in my opinion, our party has been dealing very well with those coalition contracts. And yeah, of course, there's often the debate within the party whether we should even be in the government or not, because we have many people, many comrades in our party that say the left party should always be in the opposition and push the other parties from that perspective. And there's another part of our party that says, no, we have to change the system from within. This is a big conflict in our party, but yeah, so we see the opposition perspective, we see also the government perspective, and it's two very different ways of trying to do socialist politics. But yeah, it's a challenge. And yeah, then as I said, we have the state here in Rheinland-Pfalz where I am, and there we are far from being in the parliament at all. So yeah, I think there's not one answer to this question. But we didn't break off a coalition. We were always in the opposition. That's, I don't know if I said that already.
Thank you so much, Comrade Melanie, for your answer. And with that, unfortunately, we have to close the session. I really wish that we have more time to discuss, but unfortunately, time is up. But I believe this is not our only session. I think there will be more opportunities to come in the future where we can exchange ideas and experience, and also build international solidarity across the globe. So I would like to thank our speakers for today, Comrade Sonny, Comrade Sam, Comrade Arul, and Comrade Melanie. I would like to thank our participants who have been patient with us. I would like to thank our organizers, our friends from participating socialist organizations in different countries, our logistical teams, our tech teams, our translators, interpreters, everyone who have been very kind to us and work tirelessly to support this project, especially during this capitalist crisis accelerated by the corona pandemic. I really appreciate your work and your contribution to this project. Once again, thank you so much. And don't forget to attend the next session, the closing session, a joint declaration, and the closing rally of this conference. Again, it's been a pleasure and an honor to be with you, comrades, having a very productive and insightful and also energizing conversation on the left and elections today. With that, I would like to close this session and hand it over to the organizers. Again, thank you so much.